Hello everybody, Devon Miller here, and welcome to another video in my YouTube series about my guitar rig. And today we are continuing with the in-depth look of the Mesa Boogie Triaxis by taking a look at the Lead 2 green mode. Of course, the normal disclaimer that I've used in all of the Triaxis focused videos that I've done so far in this series. I do have all of the effects bypassed in my guitar rig, so what you're hearing in this video is strictly the Mesa Boogie Triaxis, the power amp, and the speaker cabinet.
It's not easy being green, having to spend each day the color of the leaves, when I think it might be nicer being red or yellow or gold or something much more colorful like that.
So the Lead 2 modes differ quite a bit from the Lead 1 modes that we've been looking at so far in this video series. The main difference is that the Lead 2 modes are what is referred to as a post-tone control gain circuit, which basically means that the treble, middle, and bass controls come before the gain control.
I found this in Gunner room, Gunner mirror.
What is it?
Well, it's green.
This allows you a lot of flexibility when shaping your overdrive sound, because you can focus in on a particular frequency band that's being overdriven. And then, of course, using the dynamic voice, which comes later in the circuit, you can kind of re-EQ the sound later on to really bring the guitar to life and make it nice and fat in kind of a mastering sense.
What is it?
It is... It is green.
So the Lead 2 green mode is specifically taken from the lead channel preamp circuit of the Mesa Boogie Mark IV amplifier. This mode has a warm, low, mid-range boost to it, which helps thicken up the overall sound. To me, it sounds the most like a cranked Marshall amplifier, so I use this mode when I'm trying to emulate a Marshall-type sound.
Dad! Dad! Hi!
Hi, honey.
I have someone here I want you to meet.
What?
He's here to help you. I want you to meet a friend of mine.
Huh? Could you turn the music down? Huh? I can't hear you because of the music. I can't hear you. I gotta turn the music down. Okay, that's it. Hey, shut up!
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh man, that's the first time we came in together.
So now let's see how each of the controls affect the sound in this mode. Now, as I said before, the signals chain actually starts with the treble, middle, and bass controls, so we will start there first. So since they come before the gain, this allows you a little bit of flexibility when trying to zero in on a particular frequency band that you want to have overdriven. This could come in handy when you're trying to balance two different guitars that have different pickups. So say you've got one guitar with a single coil pickup in it, and you want to fatten it up a little bit so that it balances more with the other guitar you have that's got a humbucker in it. This is a prime example of where this would come in handy. Now the treble control specifically doesn't have a whole lot of effect on the sound. You know, at higher settings, and then at lower settings, you know, you can't really notice that much of a difference there.
What have you found? All I've found is that these red lights keep moving back and forth. Aside from that, this thing seems to have no other function whatsoever, sir.
Well, that's impossible. It must have some sort of function. I mean, why would the government put all that money into a thing with red lights that keep going back and forth? Doesn't make any sense. Keep working.
The middle control does have a little bit more of an effect on the overall sound. So at higher settings, it gets a little bit brighter. And at lower settings, it gets a little darker.
Oh, you think darkness is your ally? You merely adopted the dark. I was born in it, molded by it. I didn't see the light until I was already a man. By then it was nothing to me but blinding.
Now the bass control actually does have quite a bit of an effect on the overall overdrive sound. So at higher settings, the bass frequencies get a little on the flubby side. And of course, at lower settings, the sound gets quite a bit thinner and brighter.
Hi there. Are you a large person, pleasantly plump, a little on the hefty side perhaps? Well, let's face it. Are you fat? When you go jogging, do you leave potholes? When you make love, do you have to give directions? At the zoo, do elephants throw you peanuts? Do you look at a menu and say, okay? Well, now you can eat all you want, because at Thornton Mellon's Tall and Fat stores, we've got you covered. That's right, fine woolen, and woolen blend suits and sport coats in all the larger sizes. Husky, stout, extra stout, and the new Hindenburg line. And for you ladies, we have caftans, moo-moos, and our own exclusive A-frame in all colors and patterns. Yes, we have miles and miles of fabric. So take it from me, Thornton Mellon. If you want to look thin, you hang out with fat people.
Thornton Mellon's Tall and Fat, with 150 locations across America.
Lou, did you see the new spot?
Yeah, I seen it.
Do I look fat in it?
You could lose a couple of pounds.
I gotta get bigger actors.
So just like in the lead 1 modes, in order to get the best overdrive sound, you do want to find the right balance between the gain control and the lead 2 drive control. Generally speaking, you want the gain control to be set equal to or higher than the lead 2 drive control. But there are exceptions to that rule. The manual also recommends gain settings of between 7.0 and 8.5 as a good starting point. But I tend to deviate from that because I think when you get into that high of a gain range, especially if you've got higher drive settings as well, the sound just starts to get really, really mushy. You know, maybe if we take some of the bass out of it. So if you're going to have those high gain settings, you definitely want to take the bass down. Now if we set the gain control low and the lead 2 drive high, it gives us a less saturated and kind of a thinner overdrive sound. Of course, with the gain set high and the lead 2 drive set really low, again, the sound is a little bit on the mushy side. Personally, when I'm setting up a sound in this mode, I tend to start with the gain control set at about 6 and the lead 2 drive set at about 4. this gives me kind of a good starting point. You know, the sound isn't too mushy. It's still, you know, enough saturation to where I can then kind of branch off. You know, if I think it's getting a little too thick, I can back off on the bass controls or back off on the gain control. If I think that there's not enough drive, I can increase the drive control. And like I said, it's a good starting point.
Well, Your Highness, guess this is it.
That's right.
Don't get all mushy on me. So long, Princess.
Han!
Yes, Your Highness.
I thought you had decided to stay.
Well, the bounty hunter we ran into in Lord Mendel changed my mind.
Han, we need you.
We need?
Yes.
Well, what about you need?
I know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Probably don't.
And what precisely am I supposed to know?
Come on. You want me to stay because of the way you feel about me?
Yes. You're a great help to us. You're a natural leader.
No. That's not it. Come on. Come on.
You're imagining things.
Am I? Then why are you following me? Afraid I was going to leave without giving you a goodbye kiss?
I just assumed he's a Wookiee.
I can arrange that. You could use a good kiss.
So the lead 1 drive control has no function in this mode, so we'll skip over that for now. Master is, just like with all the other modes, I use this to balance out the volume of this mode versus the other modes that I have saved. So, you know, pretty self-explanatory. Higher settings are louder, lower settings are quieter.
Guards have passed.
All right, how long till they cut the power?
3 more minutes, and we can cut the wire.
So next we come to the presence control, and you know, once again we are going to use this to bring out the ultra high frequencies and help accentuate that pick attack. So higher settings. The sound is a lot brighter and the pick attack is much more pronounced. And at lower settings, the pick attack is much more subtle and the sound is overall darker.
Target was destroyed.
You'll get over it. I seem to recall you prefer to work alone.
Release me! Now!
Or what?
I'll crush her.
Oh, that sounds a little dark for you. Now, go ahead.
It'll be easy, like breaking a toothpick.
Show me. I knew you couldn't do it. Even when you have nothing to lose, you're weak. And I've outgrown you.
And last but not least, we come to the dynamic voice. Now I know in all of the other Triaxis videos that I've done, I keep saying, oh, I don't use the dynamic voice in this mode. Oh, I don't use the dynamic voice in this mode. Well, guess what? I use the dynamic voice in this mode. Finally, we get to use it. Now, the dynamic voice was actually tailor-made to work with all of the lead 2 modes. So since it's been a while since we've talked about the dynamic voice, let's just do a quick recap. The dynamic voice takes the place of the 5-band EQ that is found on most Mesa Boogie amplifiers. Since I couldn't put that EQ onto the Triaxis, instead what they did was they took several popular settings of that 5-band EQ and programmed them into the different settings of the dynamic voice. So as you change the dynamic voice setting, you're actually switching to a different preset EQ curve. generally speaking, as you increase the value of the dynamic voice, you are raising the lower frequencies and the higher frequencies and scooping out the mid-range frequencies. So there's the dynamic voice completely off. There it is at a low setting. There it is at a medium setting. And there it is at a higher setting. And as you can see, even at higher settings, even if we max this all the way out, the low frequencies don't get completely out of control. They're still, somewhat manageable.
Skywalker's spinning out of control!
So the Triaxis comes with one pre-programmed factory preset for the lead to green mode, and it is, to me, sounds like a cranked Marshall sound. So they have the gain set to 7, so pushing the gain control quite a bit, keeping it heavily saturated. Treble is set to 5, so keeping it pretty much in the middle of the road, especially since the treble control has very little effect on the sound in this mode. Middle is also set to 5, so not too dark, not too bright, keeping it pretty much in the middle there. Bass is set to a 4.5, so keeping some bass frequencies in there, not thinning out the sound too much, but at the same time not boosting the bass frequencies to a higher setting so that the sound gets too flubby. Lead 1 drive has no function in this mode, so it's set to 0. Lead 2 drive is set to 3, so a lower lead 2 drive setting. Probably trying to keep it a little on the cleaner side, especially with that higher gain setting. Master is at a 4.5, so moderate output volume. Presence is set to a 2, so keeping it a little bit on the darker side with that lower presence setting. And curiously enough, the dynamic voice is set to 0, so they're not doing any post EQ on this sound. Keeping it a little bit mid-range heavy.
And who was the original host?
A bounty hunter called Jango Fett.
And where is this bounty hunter now?
Oh, we keep him here. Apart from his pay, which is considerable, Fett demanded only one thing. An unaltered clone for himself. Curious, isn't it?
So I would use the lead 2 green mode for 3 main sounds. The first one is kind of an Eddie Van Halen inspired brown sound that I would use on any Van Halen song like Jump or even Panama. And I would also use this sound when we do Rock and Roll Hoochie Coo by Rick Derringer. And of course, I use this sound for the song "Sweet Child of Mine" by Guns N' Roses. So I have the gain set to a 3. So you know, surprise, surprise, the gain is actually set pretty low. You know, I don't want a lot of gain on this sound, because with the higher gain settings, to me the sound gets a little too mushy. Treble is set to 6, so even though the treble control doesn't have a lot of effect on the sound, I am boosting the treble frequencies just a bit to help kind of brighten up the sound. Middle I've got set to 8. You know, this is where I'm really pushing those mid-range frequencies, trying to brighten up the sound at the front end. Bass I've got set to 2. So again, backing off on those bass frequencies so that the sound doesn't get too mushy or flubby. And you know, later on we'll thicken it back up again. Lead 1 drive is set to 0. It has no function in this mode. Lead 2 drive is set to 6. So you know, here's one of those exceptions I was talking about where I've got the lead 2 drive set higher than the gain control. To me, this kind of gives it that brown sound that Eddie Van Halen had in those early albums. You know, it's almost kind of a sagging overdrive sound, but you know, get some saturation, but not too much overall gain to where you lose the distinction in the notes. Of course, the master I've got set to 5, so average output volume. Presence I've got set to 7, so you know, trying to boost those ultra high frequencies, bring out that pick attack. And dynamic voice is set to 5, so this is where we're going to warm the guitar back up at the end of the line, boosting those low frequencies and also boosting those high frequencies to maintain the crispness.
I like it to sound like it's basically dying and then back it off a tad. Right. With the old amps I used to use, I turn them all the way up. People would tell me, you can't use them like that. I go, really? Watch this. You know, there are little tricks that I did to keep it from blowing, but you know, all kinds of guitarists used to come and snoop around and see what the hell I was doing. But it was pretty basic, really. It was just turn all the way up. Everyone at Fender was blown away because when they left, I think if you remember, I put a guitar down with a cabinet.
I remember it.
And turned the amp all the way up and just waited for it to feed back. I said, okay, let's go. And we're halfway out the studio, and everyone was looking at me like, aren't you going to turn the amp off? And I said, no, that's how I crash test my stuff. And they came back a month later, and the amp was still on. And without blowing.
So it can sustain for a month.
Yeah.
Continuously.
I think we did that 3 times.
Yeah.
You know, every time we made a change, okay, come back in a month. Let's see if it holds up.
So the other main way that I would use the lead 2 green mode is for kind of an AC/DC, like classic Marshall crunch sound. But of course, I would also use this sound on Barracuda by Heart. And it's kind of my go-to rhythm or lead sound when doing a lot of different classic rock songs. So, you know, say, Hit Me With Your Best Shot by Pat Benatar. Or I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett. And even You Might Think by The Cars. So, as you can see, I've got the gain set to 3. So, you know, keeping that gain control backed off a little bit, I want this sound to be a little bit more on the cleaner side, not so much overdrive and saturation. Treble is set to 3, so even though the treble control doesn't have very much effect on the overall sound, I am backing off on those treble frequencies a little bit. I want to keep this more of a mid-range sound. And of course, middle is set to 7, so you know, really boosting that middle control, trying to you know, really accent those mid-range frequencies. Bass I've got set to 5, so you know, not really backing off on the bass control on this sound, especially not as much as we did on the last sound. I want a little bit more of those low frequencies to help thicken up the sound a little bit so it doesn't get too thin. Of course, lead 1 drive has no function in this mode, so it's set to 0. Lead 2 drive is set to 2, so here I'm going back to that rule of thumb where the gain control is either equal to or higher than the lead 2 drive control. To me, this gives me the best balance of, you know, sustain and saturation without going overboard with it, and still keeping it relatively on the cleaner side. Master is set to 5, so moderate output volume. Presence is also set to 5, so you know, not really boosting those ultra high frequencies, but still maintaining that pick attack and the distinction in the notes. And dynamic voice I have set to 3, so not really boosting the dynamic voice as much as on the previous sound. I don't want as much low-end and high-end frequencies on the tail end of this sound like I did in the last sound that we looked at. I remember reading a guitar teacher's website several years ago, and he basically said that the main difference between Eddie Van Halen's sound and AC/DC sound is AC/DC has less gain and more mid-range. So basically, I've tried to emulate that with this mode.
Yeah, I need a suit.
Suit?
What?
Nothing. You take care of the suit. I'll take care of the music.
Oh, I love Led Zeppelin!
And the final way that I would use the lead 2 green mode is for the solo section in the song Magic Man by Heart, where one guitar bends the note up while the other guitar releases the note down. When we get into the effects that I use on that song, I will go over how I achieve playing both of those pitches at the same time. But for now, this is how it sounds with just the dry guitar. So as you can see, I've got the gain set to 6. So kind of going back to my starting point that I talked about earlier, you know, setting the gain to 6. I really like the way that that sounded, so I just left it there. Treble I've got set to 5, so you know, since treble really doesn't have that much effect on the overall sound in this mode, just kind of keeping it right in the middle, constant. Speaking of middle, I've got the middle control set to 7, so boosting those mid-range frequencies, trying to fatten up the sound a little bit. If you go back and listen to the original recording, it's pretty heavy on the mid-range, so that's kind of what I'm trying to emulate here. Bass I've got set to 6, so I know that's a little bit higher bass setting than what I normally use in this mode, but since I'm not playing any rhythm guitar on this mode at all, strictly using this sound only for that one lead solo, I can get away with a little bit higher bass setting to try to help thicken up the sound a little bit. Lead 1 drive has no function in this mode. It's set to 0. Lead 2 drive is set to 4, so once again, my general starting point, gain at 6, lead 2 drive at 4, and you know, it really sounded great just where it was, so I didn't see any need to change it. Master I've got set to 5.0, so average output volume. Presence I've got set to 4, so backing off a little bit on those ultra high frequencies, trying to keep the sound from getting too bright. And dynamic voice I've got set to 3, so you know, bringing in a little bit of the dynamic voice, but not boosting the low and high frequencies and too much. Also, don't want to scoop out those mid-range frequencies. I want to keep the sound a little more mid-range heavy.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.
There is no spoon?
Then you'll see that it is not the spoon that bends, it is only yourself.
So that pretty much does it for the lead 2 green mode. As always, please throw a like on this video. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you're thinking about this video series. And next time we're going to take a look at the lead 2 yellow mode. So until next time, goodbye for now. And I will see you in the next video.
Thank you.